Good evening. This special meeting of the Board of Trustees of Socorro ISD is being held April 13th, 2020. The time is 5:30 p.m. I have the script to start the meeting. On March 16th, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to the extent necessary to allow telephonic or video conference meetings in response to the coronavirus. In accordance with those suspended rules, we certify the following. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. Number one, although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by telephone call and internet access. Number two, we are meeting by use of both telephone conference call, online access, and through use of an email link for questions. Number three, if a member of the public submitted written comments in advance, the board president or a member of the administration will read the comments into record before or during the board's consideration of that item. If you would like to provide comment at a future meeting conducted by video conference or telephone call, please follow instructions on the meeting notice. Number four, all other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practicable. Number five, an audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. Number six, we apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate unprecedented conditions. Number seven, if you have questions about these suspended laws, please call the Office of the Attorney General at 888-672-6787. I will now do a roll call of board members to establish a quorum. Paul Guetta.
Present.
Angelica Rodriguez.
Here.
Gary Gondeta. I'm thinking because it's Mr. Gondeta's birthday, he had other things to do this evening.
That's no excuse.
I agree.
Eddie Mena.
Present.
Paul Garcia.
Here.
David Morales.
Present.
And Dr. Espinosa.
Present.
Okay, now that we have established a quorum, we are called to order. If everyone will please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice, freedom and justice for all. And we will move on to item number 3, new business. A, consider approval of requesting a waiver with TEA for the 2019-2020 educator appraisals. Mr. Campoya.
Good evening, President Nájera, Dr. Espinosa, and members of the board. I'm Rudy Campoya, Chief Human Resources Officer for the school district. Due to the COVID-19 and the district closure, administration is requesting approval to submit a waiver to the Texas Education Agency for the 2019-2020 educator appraisals. According to TEA, waivers will be reviewed and approved pursuant to the Commissioner's General Waiver Authority under Texas Education Code for school districts that are unable to complete the appraisals due to the circumstances arising from the COVID-19 pandemic. Administration is recommending your approval to submit a waiver to TEA for the 2019-2020 educator appraisals.
President Nájera, this is Mr. Guerra.
Yes, sir, Mr. Guetta.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
This is Angelica Rodriguez. I'd like to second that.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Guetta and a second by Ms. Rodriguez. I'll now do a roll call of all board members. Paul Guetta.
Aye.
Angelica Rodriguez.
Aye.
Mr. Mena.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia.
Aye.
And Mr. Morales.
Aye.
And the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Campoya.
Thank you.
Item 3B, consider approval to declare as surplus and donate idle food items and supplies that will spoil if unused. Mr. Reza.
Yes, President Nakira, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board. I am Tony Reza, Chief Financial Officer for the district. If you'll turn to page 4 of your board packet. The administration is requesting the board's approval to declare as surplus idle food items and supplies for the purpose of donating them to local charities in the communities. These items are culinary arts, foodstuffs, campus and department snacks, and soft drinks. Policy CI Local allows for the disposal of district property other than real property in accordance with certain guidelines. With this amendment, the district will be declaring 3 things. Number 1, the property and materials in question will have no resale value because they will spoil and become useless before a sale can be arranged and made. Materials and properties can be donated to accomplish a public purpose and ensure that public funds are not wasted during the pandemic and assist with community relief efforts. Number 2, the district will retain control over the donation by choosing entities that serve a public assistance purpose. And number 3, SISD will benefit from the donation by assisting the residents of the school district and surrounding areas during the pandemic. Are there any questions?
President Nájera, this is Ms. Rodriguez. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
President Nájera, this is Paul Garcia. I'd like to second that.
Thank you. I have a motion by Ms. Rodriguez and a second by Mr. Garcia. Is there any further questions?
President Nájera, this is Ms. Rodriguez.
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to say thank you all so much for your consideration in this. In looking at everything that's going on in our community and even outside of our local community, I'm hearing farm workers are having to dispose of food and, dairy farms having to do the same thing. So thank you for being proactive and bringing this to us so we can put this food to use versus allowing it to sit and spoil. So I'd just like to say thank you to Dr. Espinosa and Cabinet and Mr. Reza for bringing this to our attention. Again, it's so much better utilized to be able to donate the food items than run the risk of it going to waste. So thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Is there any further comments? And I will do a roll call. Mr. Guerra.
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Aye.
Mr. Mena.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia.
Aye.
Mr. Morales.
Aye.
And the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
3C, thank you, Mr. Reza. Item 3C, consider approval of resolution of the Board of Trustees regarding policy DEA local, which is employee compensation plan during district's emergency closure. Ms. Macias.
President Nájera, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board, this is Maribel Macias, Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services. I'm here to present a resolution for your approval. With your patience, I will read this 5-page document. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Socorro Independent School District regarding employee compensation plan during district's emergency closure over concerns of public health and safety during the COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas in December 2019, a novel coronavirus, now designated COVID-19, was detected in China and has since reached European countries, the United States, and most recently El Paso, Texas, and its sister city of Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua, Mexico. And whereas on March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization characterized COVID-19 as a pandemic. And whereas on March 13th, 2020, the governor of the state of Texas declared a state of disaster, and the president of the United States of America declared a national emergency in relation to COVID-19. And whereas on March 13th, 2020, the city of El Paso declared a local state of emergency in relation to COVID-19. And whereas on March 13th, 2020, the city of El Paso confirmed among its residents its first presumptive positive case of COVID-19. And whereas the emergence and spread of COVID-19 within El Pasoans poses an imminent threat of widespread illness resulting from an epidemic that requires emergency action. And whereas the superintendent of the Socorro Independent School District is authorized by policy EB local to close schools for reasons of public health. And whereas on March 13th, 2020, the superintendent in fact declared an emergency closure for the purpose of emergency preparedness scheduled to immediately following the previously set spring break and beginning on March 15th, 2020 through April 6, 2020, in an effort to protect the health and safety of students and campus community. Whereas on March 14th, 2020, the Department of Public Health for the City of El Paso issued to the El Paso area schools district guidance and directives related to concerns over COVID-19 to include a directive that students not return to school until April 6, 2020. And whereas the superintendent has since extended the durations of the district's emergency closure for an extended period of time and until further notice, pursuant to the guidance and directives issued by the Department of Public Health and Governor of the State of Texas, Executive Order Number GA-14. And whereas the Board of Trustees of the Socorro Independent School District is authorized by Texas Education Code Section 45.105 to extend funds of the district to purposes necessary in the conduct of the public schools as determined by the board. And whereas the board acknowledges that during the emergency closure, district employees may be instructed not to report for work. And whereas the board acknowledges that during the emergency closure, most district employees are instructed not to report for work, and other employees may be called upon to provide auxiliary or emergency-related services remotely from home or physically on site. And whereas the board finds that a need exists to address wage payments for employees who were idled and those remotely working from home or physically on site required to work to complete essential duties during the district's emergency closure. And whereas the board determines that employees who are instructed not to report to work may suffer a loss of pay if the district is closed unless the workdays are made up or at a later date. And whereas the board concludes that continuing compensation or wage payments to all district employees as identified during the meeting of the Board of Trustees on March 16, 2020, as a result of the emergency closure, whether contractual and non-contractual, salaried and non-salaried district employees on the district's payroll who would otherwise suffer a loss in pay due to the district's emergency closure, serves the public purposes of minimizing further community spread of COVID-19 in the El Paso County region, maintaining morale, reducing turnover, and ensuring continuity of district staffing when schools reopen. And whereas to the non-exempt essential employees who are called to remotely or physically report to work to complete essential duties during the emergency closure, the board further concludes that payment of certain employees at a premium rate as provided at DEA local serves the public purpose of maintaining morale, providing equity between idle employees and employees who provide auxiliary or emergency-related services during the emergency closure, and further recognizes the services of essential staff. And whereas pursuant to district policy, non-exempt essential employees are called on to work during the emergency closure must still obtain prior approval from their supervisor before working remotely from home more than 25 hours in a given week or more than 40 hours in any given week physically on site during the emergency closure. And whereas any overtime hours actually worked in excess of 40 hours in any given week during the emergency closure shall be paid and calculated in accordance with district policy and conformance with the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act. And whereas the Socorro Independent School District declared the emergency closure on March 15, 2020, due to concerns over the growing possibility of community spread of COVID-19, and whereas certain employees were instructed not to work during this district's emergency closure, and whereas certain employees were or will be called on and reported or will be reported to work remotely or physically and provided or will provide auxiliary or emergency-related services from home or on-site during the district's emergency closure. And whereas the Board of Trustees will consider the financial burden on the district in the event an emergency closure is further extended, and limit the premium pay as necessary to a portion of the extended closure. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Socorro Independent District authorizes continued wage payments to all employees as specified during the board meeting on March 16, 2020, as a result of the emergency closure, whether contractual and non-contractual, salaried or non-salaried, on the district's payroll during the emergency closure. Be it further resolved that non-exempt essential employees covered by policy DEA local who were or will be required to remotely or physically report to work to complete essential duties during the emergency closure shall be paid at the premium rate described by the policy during the period of time from March 15, 2020 until the date set forth in this resolution or until otherwise revised by additional board action. Be it further resolved as to non-exempt employees, essential employees covered by policy DEA local who were called on to work remotely or physically during the emergency closure, payment of these employees at a premium rate as provided in this resolution serves the public purpose of maintaining morale, providing equity between idle employees and employees who provide auxiliary or emergency-related services on or off-site, and further recognizes the services of essential staff. Be it further resolved that pursuant to district policy, non-exempt essential employees who are called on to work remotely or physically during the emergency closure must still obtain prior approval from their supervisor before working more than 25 hours and 40 hours respectively in any given week during the emergency closure. Any overtime hours worked in excess of 40 hours in any given week during the emergency closure shall be paid and calculated in accordance with district policy and in conformance with a Federal Fair Labor Standards Act. Be it further resolved that in the event that the emergency closure is further extended by the superintendent, the Board of Trustees hereby suspends the application of that portion of policy DEA local that provides for premium pay during a closure as specified herein. Specifically, this suspension on the premium pay portions of policy DEA local shall begin on May 30th, 2020 and continue until further action or revision of this resolution by the Board of Trustees. The board at such time will consider the financial burden on the district and shall address premium pay as necessary to any extended closure. The authority granted by this resolution related to wage payments to idled employees is limited to the period of the district's emergency closure as initially declared by the superintendent on March 13, 2020, and beginning on March 15, 2020 to conclude until further action or revision of this resolution by the Board of Trustees, and further authorizes premium rate payment to non-exempt employees who provide auxiliary or emergency-related services on or off-site during the district's emergency closure, beginning on March 15th, 2020, until the premium pay portions of policy DEA local are suspended, beginning on May 30th, 2020. Adopted this 13th day of April, 2020 by the Board of Trustees. At this time, I would recommend approval as read.
President Nahara, this is Mr. Guerra.
Yes, sir, Mr. Guerra.
Ms. Macias, are you okay now? That was a long-winded, but well-read resolution. I'd like to make a motion to pass.
Ms. Nakara, this is Mr. Mena. I would like to second that.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Guerra and a second by Mr. Mena. Is there any further comments?
Yes, Mrs. Nakara, this is Gary Gandara.
Yes, sir, Mr. Guerra. Thank you for joining us.
I apologize. Ms. Macias,
Yes, sir.
can you read it again?
Yes, sir, I can.
No, I'm playing. No, I was here. Okay.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Okay, if there's no further questions or comments, I'll do a roll call for approval. Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Morales.
Aye.
And the motion carries. Thank you so much, Ms. Macias. Item 3D, consider approval of resolution of the Board of Trustees regarding policy EIA local regulation, EIC local, EIE regulation, and EIF local regulation. Ms. Macias, I believe we have a question on this agenda item.
Yes, ma'am.
Will you please read it now?
Yes, ma'am. President Nájera, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board, administration recommends approval of the following resolution.
I'm sorry, Ms. Macias, to interrupt you, but we need to hear the question first. There was an emailed question.
Oh, I'm not aware of that. Let me look at.
Ms. Nájera, President Nájera, this is Ms. Borrego.
Yes, Ms. Borrego.
I have the question.
If you can please read it, please, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Do I give the name of the parent?
Yes, ma'am.
This question is from April Morton, and she is a parent, and her question is, will the grading policy put into place during the remote learning period affect a student's promotion into the next grade level? For example, can a campus retain a student if any remote learning work is incomplete?
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Borrego. Thank you. And Ms. Macias, I'm sorry, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Nájera. President Nájera, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board, at this time, administration recommends approval of the following resolution as read. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Socorro Independent School District regarding temporary modification to local policies EIA, EIC, EIE, and due to COVID-19. Whereas on March 19th, 2020, the Texas governor issued executive order number GA-08 relating to COVID-19 preparedness and mitigation through this action, and in accordance with guidelines from the President of the United States ordering the temporary closure of all Texas school districts. Whereas on March 15th, 2020, the superintendent of the Socorro Independent School District declared an imminent and emergency shutdown of the district to protect the health and safety of staff and students. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Socorro Independent School District has implemented procedures for continuity of instruction to the extent possible during the indefinite district closure. And whereas the board finds that a need exists to temporarily adjust local policy provisions and provides fairness and consistency in addressing guidelines for grading, class rank calculations, district grade reclassification, and foundation program graduation requirements under these unprecedented circumstances. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Socorro Independent School District make the following temporary modifications to policy EIA local guidelines for grading. Remote learning student work in grades pre-K through 12th for the fourth 9 weeks marking period of the 2019-2020 school year shall be graded on a progressing PR or incomplete IN scale. Grades for this reporting period shall be determined by 1 daily grade per week for each subject area. Grading guidelines shall be communicated in a timely manner to all district stakeholders. Now therefore be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Socorro Independent School District make the following temporary modification to policy EIC local, class rank calculation. GPA and class rank for senior students shall be calculated by averaging semester grades earned in grades 9 through 12, excluding second semester of the 2019-2020 school year. Grades earned for the second semester of the 2019-2020 school year will not be included in the calculation for class rank or GPA. Weighted courses shall not be granted points for the second semester of the 2019-2020 school year. Top 10, valedictorian, salutatorian, etc. for graduating seniors shall be based on GPA and class rank as of the end of the first semester of the 2019-2020 school year. Now therefore be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Socorro Independent School District make the following temporary modifications to policy EIE local district grade reclassification. Grade levels will be adjusted for high school students that are projected to be seniors at each campus during the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year. The campus grade reclassification committee will convene as needed to review documents for reclassification purposes. Now therefore be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Socorro Independent School District make the following temporary modification to policy EIF local foundation program graduation requirements. To graduate, a student shall complete either the courses required by the district or those mandated by the state. A student may graduate under the foundation program without earning the distinguished level achievement in accordance with state law. The authority granted by this resolution to temporarily adjust local policies EIA, EIC, EIE, and EIF as indicated in this resolution and as clarified in district resolution guidelines shall be limited to and apply only for the 2019-2020 school year, unless the board takes further action. Adopted this 13th day of April 2020 by the Board of Trustees. At this time, administration recommends approval as read.
Are there any questions?
President Nakira,
This is Mr. Guerra.
to approve.
Have to get a motion to approve.
I'm sorry, Mr. Guerra, Mr. Mena was ahead of you. Mr. Mena?
Yes, ma'am. This is Mr. Mena. Motion to approve.
Mr. Guerra will second it.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Mena and a second by Mr. Guerra. Is there any further questions or comments?
President Nakira, this is Paul Garcia. I have a question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Garcia.
Yes, it's for, was it Maribel who was reading it? I think it was remote learning student working grades pre-K through 12 for the 4 weeks, marking period of 1920 school year shall be graded on a progressing or incomplete scale. Grades for this reporting period shall be determined by 1 daily grade per week for each subject area. Will there be any exceptions to that? I know there's some families that still don't have internet. They're still going through some challenges.
Yes, sir. And know that our guidelines, again, with everybody's input, is in the best interest of our students and flexibility for our teachers. We have that IN, that incomplete grade, and that incomplete grade can be made up from pre-K through 8th grade all the way up till July, and for high school all the way up through December. That gives us time to be able to reach any of the little ones that we might not have if we're not able to get in contact with them. That gives us time, once we have them back in our possession, school is back, you know that what we do is we get them ready, we will catch them up. So that gives our teachers that flexibility. Once we officially have our students back with us, that we're able to provide them that guidance to catch them up and give them any work that they might be missing that we might not have been able to get in contact with them. Know that we're thinking of all students, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I will now do a roll call. Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Ms. Macias, you have gone above and beyond tonight. Thank you so very much. And Dr. Espinosa, can we please reach out to the parent who had the question and make sure that her question was answered with this resolution?
Yes, ma'am, we sure will.
Okay. If there is no further business before this board, we are adjourned. The time is 5:59. Thank you all so much for joining us. Please be safe. And we're thinking of you.